Joining us now, Heritage Foundation visiting fellow, author of the book, The Capitalist Comeback, Andy Puzder. Okay, Andy, they're not going to see $44 billion deal again. I mean, they should have just held Elon Musk's hand. I mean, to get him through the deal. But here's the thing, Andy, I want to talk to you about this. Twitter is getting blasted for not stopping this harassment. Look at this. They're not censoring this, right? Shut down D.C. This tweet is still up. They're a liberal group. They tweeted out they will pay up to $250 for information on the whereabouts of the Supreme Court justices who overturned Roe v. Wade. They're talking Justices Alito, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh. This is just a month or so after a California man was arrested in an assassination threat against Justice Kavanaugh at his home in Maryland. So how is this okay?
Well, clearly it's not okay. This is really an horrific attack on a cherished American institution through good times and bad times. We may not have agreed with the Supreme Court, but we're always very supportive of the people that are on the court. Look, they've reached a lot of decisions that I didn't agree with. I didn't run out and decide I'm going to harass the justices that reached that decision in the next restaurant I saw them in. It's wrong. Twitter, look, to get back to Twitter, Twitter is run by a bunch of leftist children who are out there trying to accomplish political goals. They're not actually trying to be fair or just. If they were, the Hunter Biden laptop story would have run. These justices wouldn't be being harassed based on information that is changed on Twitter.
We're not a banana republic. We're the United States of America. We're a beacon of light, of freedom to the world. Stalking is now condoned? And now it's a paid side job? Really? Stalking of justices is okay, right? I mean, so Axios has reported that Twitter is saying in an email to Axios that this is not in violation of Twitter's safety policies, but it's harassment and intimidation of a justice. It's against the law. Again, Justice Kavanaugh had to leave a steakhouse restaurant in D.C. after protesters showed up outside. There's no free speech right to intimidate and harass sitting justices.
No, there's not. And there ought to be an asterisk on each of these policies at Twitter that says they don't apply to conservatives. They only apply if you're attacking a liberal, a leftist, a progressive, then the policies apply. But if you attack a conservative, you move to the front of the line. You know, and get back to this Elon Musk question. Keep in mind, Elon Musk may just be negotiating. He knows he's negotiating basically with children, with people that really don't understand business or understand how to run a business. And he may be trying to get the price down. There may be a Musk deal out there yet.
Yeah, there might be.
Just for a lesser price, which is, he's a smart guy. There's nothing wrong with doing that.
I got to move on to this. The Transportation Secretary Buttigieg, reports are, Andy, that he's moving to Michigan, right? That's his husband's home state. Michigan is a swing state. He's not moving for the taxes. Michigan has high property taxes. But I want your reaction to this. The Transportation Secretary catching heat for defending the intimidation and protests of Supreme Court justices. There is no free speech right to do this. Watch this.
So yes, people are upset. They're going to exercise their First Amendment rights. And as long as that's peaceful, that's protected. Compare that, for example, to the reality that as a country, right now, we're reckoning with the fact that a mob summoned by the former president
All right, well, let me follow up, Mr. Secretary.
attacked the United States Capitol for the purpose of overthrowing the election and very nearly succeeded in preventing the peaceful transfer of power.
Do you see how he just contradicted himself? Right? So he's saying, and by the way, it's not okay. It's against the law. There is no free speech right, First Amendment right, to harass and intimidate justices. This is an actual threat to our democracy, but he brings up the Capitol riots. He's not also bringing up how protesters in Arizona broke into the state capitol last month, and police had to use tear gas to get them out. He's not bringing up how the Biden DOJ and FBI moved to crack down on school board parents protesting at school board meetings over what schools are teaching their children. But Pete Buttigieg and Democrats are okay with what you're seeing on camera.
Hey, look, the Democrats have two things, and neither one of them is working. One of them is the January 6th claim that there was a riot, and the other is the abortion issue. That's it. The economy's in the tank, foreign policy's in the tank, the border is porous. I mean, they got nothing going on. People can't go to the gas station or the grocery store without getting mad at Democrats. So anytime they're going to talk, they'll bring up January 6th and they'll bring up abortion because that's all they've got.
Well, January 6th was bad, right? That was a bad thing. It should never have happened. right? It should not in our democracy.
No, it's stupid.
But what's going on with these justices is wrong. I mean, we've got FBI Director Christopher Wray saying last week there's been a rise in attacks and threats against pro-life establishments, and now we've got, you know, the justices still getting harassed and a bounty put on information about them and their whereabouts. Your final word.
Well, you wonder how these institutions would have reacted if conservatives had gone after Supreme Court justices when the abortion decision came down, or when it was confirmed in the Casey case back in the early 90s. I think if we had done, if conservatives had done, if pro-lifers had done what these allegedly pro-choice people are doing, I think they'd have been thrown in jail. There would have been no support in any media outlet, including Twitter, although Twitter wasn't around back then. But there certainly would have been any support for what these people did, and there shouldn't be any support for what they're doing now. Again, Twitter's not being run by people that are in any way objective. They have some liability limitations that Congress put in place to protect them from being sued. Those should be eliminated.
Yeah,
they should get rid of those right away and make them responsible for what they publish.
This is dangerous stuff. If something bad happens, everything that you and I were just talking about is going to come back to haunt anybody who supports this. Andy Puzder, always terrific, a great writer. Come back soon, Andy.
Thanks,
it's
Liz.
good to see you.